in the battle you must have had with him." Ash shrugged and then looked at Pikachu. "Nah, not really, Pikachu took care of them pretty quickly." Misty smiled. "Yeah, more like with one thunderbolt. It was over in about 5 seconds." Both women's eyes widened in surprise, with Joy speaking in a manner which relayed the feeling well. "Really? A Team Rocket agent and you defeated him so quickly?" The boy in question shrugged again, modestly. You know, we train hard." Pikachu lifted his little fist. "Pika." "Well," Jenny managed to heft the unconscious grunt up to his feet. "What say you two boys help me get this guy into my car? I gotta get him downtown so I can start the booking process." Ash, and an especially eager Brock, acted to fulfill her request and assisted the female officer in walking the man into her squad car. After that, Jenny and Joy both bade the children a final ode of thanks, as well as farewell, before driving off. "Now that's all over and done with," Ash turned to Misty and gestured toward the road. "You ready to lead us the rest of the way to the Cape?" The oranguette pulled on the strap of her red bag and winked. "Sure thing, follow me guys." With those words spoken, the traveling trio continued on their way up to the Cerulean Cape. The journey was relatively short from where they were near the battle bridge, and when they finally arrived at their destination, Ash and Brock took a moment to appreciate the sight awaiting them. The Cape, since it was elevated above sea level, gave a breathtaking view of Cerulean City far below. It also gave a majestic view of Mt. Moon in the distance, as well as Mt. Cerulean off to the northwest, or the southeast from where they were standing. They could also see the wide open country, mixed with forest landscape, which went south from Cerulean toward Vermilion City. The Cape itself had a large lake in the midst of its center with forest and trees surrounding it on most every side. Mount Cerulean tapered off into a series of rocky, up and down hills directly behind the Cape, and off to the extreme west, they could see a channel of water flowing down out of the hills, around the outskirts of Cerulean and off into the southwest, eventually tapering and bending its way to Vermilion City and the sea. The front side of the lake, where they were standing atop a raised plateau, had a railed-off observation area that allowed visitors to look out over all of the sights that the elevation afforded. There were a few picnic tables here and there, a series of telescope binoculars that gave one the ability to peer even farther into the distance, and a plaque, which told the geographic history of the Cape and the surrounding area, as well as the early formation of Cerulean City itself. Behind them was a bridge, similar in design but smaller than the Battle Bridge, which stretched across the lake and connected one end of it to the other. Lanterns were built atop the bridge that provided light and a romantic atmosphere for late-night strollers, and on the other side of the lake, a large lodge had been built. The building was made entirely of handcrafted, hand-carved logs and boasted the most elegant rustic design of such structure for miles around. The lodge served multiple functions as a resting place, a gift shop, a restaurant, and an inn for late-night stays. What caught Ash's eye though, after taking everything else in, was an expanse of mountainous terrain, like a big humped hill, which he could just barely see off to the west of Cerulean. Or at least, it was west from where they were standing. "Hey Misty, what's that?" He pointed at the mountainous hump in the distance. She looked in the direction he was pointing and squinted. "Oh, that's the rock tunnel." Brock continued for her. "It's on Route 10 and provides the second of 3 routes into Lavender Town. The other connecting it to Saffron City, and the last one eventually making a circuit to Fuchsia City. Near Rock Tunnel is the Kanto Power Plant, the biggest one in the region." Misty gave a small chortle of amusement. "People claim to have seen the legendary Pokémon Zapdos appear around the power plant, but it's just a bunch of tall tales. Like one of those local urban legends." Ash raised an eyebrow. "Really? Hey, that's pretty cool." He then looked at her and smiled. "Thanks for bringing us here, Misty, this is really nice." She returned the smile to her messy-haired friend and then stared out beyond the overlook. "It really is. My parents used to bring me and my sisters here when I was really little before they passed away. I love coming here and just enjoying the peaceful atmosphere." After a few moments, she turned back around and looked at both of her friends. "What do you guys think about going to eat at the lodge?" Ash and Pikachu's stomachs both seemed to growl at the same time as Trainer and Pokémon smiled sheepishly and identically rubbed the back of their heads, the latter's ears drooping humorously and cutely at the same time. Well, Brock crossed his arms and laughed. I think that's a resounding yes. They all shared in his humor for a moment and then made the trek across the bridge to the other side of the lake. There, they spent the rest of the afternoon and early evening at the lodge, enjoying the satisfying food and enjoyable companionship that came with it. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX midnight and the good residents of Cerulean were mostly all tucked into their warm beds for the night. However, not all things were as calm and tranquil in every part of the city. The Cerulean aquatic rentals store was locked up tight and the staff had long since left. Situated in the heart of the city and sandwiched between two other stores in the crowded shopping center area, the rental store seemed to be an unassuming locale that would only appeal to a very particular customer demographic. Little did anyone know though that at present, it was the target of highly illicit criminal activity. Specifically speaking, at the hands of three bumbling, foolish Team Rocket rejects. In the back room of the store, where all the largest equipment was kept, a ventilation grate at the top of the wall started to rattle and shake. A few seconds later, the grate dropped down to the floor and three shadowy shapes slipped out of the shaft, one after the other. Three flashlights soon flickered to life and revealed, in all their badly dressed lack of splendor, Jesse, James and Meowth. Coming in through the ventilation shaft from that alley out back was a brilliant idea, Meowth, James complimented as he looked down at the smallest member of their trio. Of course it was. The talking Pokémon crossed his arms and smirked. I came up with it, didn't I? I was also da one dad recommended we slip away in all da confusion back at MT. Moon after dat operation failed. Jesse snapped back at them. Focus you two. We're here for a reason, remember. Now help me look for it. She went back to shining her flashlight around the storeroom and as James joined her, she growled threateningly. You better be right and it really is, hear me out. We can't pull off that job at the Cerulean gym without it. The unofficial brains of the outfit nodded in self-assured confidence. Course it's here. I researched it online and read dat dis place rents out top people for drainin' pools and stuff. Suddenly, James made a pleased exclamation of, there it is. And turned his flashlight onto an extremely large machine with a huge industrial-sized hose connected to it. The tag connected to it read, Aquatic Pool Vac, for industrial use only. Yep, that's it, Jamesy boy. Meowth walked up and looked at the machine for a few moments. This is exactly what we need to raid da Cerulean gym and drain up all dear water so we can steal da Pokémon. Jessie crossed her arms beneath her bust and smirked. It's pretty big. Good thing we had that handy little gadget teleported to us from HQ. She then looked at the blue-haired man. James. Nodding, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, cube-shaped box that was black with little bulb nodules on its metal surface. Kneeling down, he placed the device up against the machine and pressed a button on the side of the cube. A few seconds after he did this, the square box started to glow and the nodules on it all began blinking in a series of random color patterns. Then, from the top, a bright beam of blue light shot up at the large aquatic machine. While James and the other two stood back, the beam of light emitting from the small cube actually started to shrink the vacuum and made it smaller and smaller until it began to dissolve and was soon pulled straight into the beam of light. The ray of size transmogrifying energy then disappeared back into the cube, taking with it the huge machine in all of its entirety. Effectively leaving no trace or sign that it had ever been there save for a large empty space on the floor. James picked up the cube and stuck it into his pocket again before looking at his teammates. Mission complete, we have what we came for. Jesse smirked. Good, now let's get out of here. We have a big day tomorrow and a lot of Pokémon to steal. With that, all three grunts climbed back up into the ventilation shaft and returned the way they came, covering their tracks well with not a shred of evidence left behind. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX Ash was enjoying one of Brock's delicious breakfasts as they sat with Misty and her sisters in the living quarters of the gym. The place that the Waterflower sisters called home wasn't terribly big, but it was cozy and homey. In the main lobby out front there was a set of double doors that lead into the actual gym itself where the battlefield was at. To describe the battle area in question, firstly, it consisted of a large, rectangular-shaped pool with floating, different-colored platforms in the water that Pokémon could battle on. The walls were all colored plain black, and at the far end of the room was yet another door. This is the one that lead into the condo-esque living space that Misty and her sisters were raised in. When one stepped inside, the first thing they saw was an entryway that was combined with the living room off to the right side and the kitchen dining area on the opposite end of the condo. Directly ahead there was a short hallway which lead to the laundry room, the bathroom and the 4 girls' bedrooms. Ash, Brock, Misty and her sisters were sitting at the dining room table chatting over biscuits with strawberry jelly, eggs, diced fruit and pecha berry juice. As they ate, Daisy looked at her youngest sister's friends and asked, "So how did you boys sleep out here last night?" Having returned late from the Cape the night before, Ash and Brock stayed at the gym on Misty and her sister's invite. Even though there was much debate over the matter, Ash had insisted Brock take the couch in the living room while he slept on the floor with Pikachu. "We slept good," Ash answered before looking around at the finely decorated condo. There were plants here and there, nice furniture situated in well-fitted areas, and pictures hanging on the walls or placed atop shelves. Oddly enough, he didn't see hardly any books on any of the few bookshelves he saw. Mostly pictures, knick-knacks, aquatic decor and other miscellaneous items. It was his guess, from what he had seen of Misty's sisters thus far, that none of them were all that interested in pastimes such as reading. All in all though, the condo was clean, comfortable, well-furnished and the decor fit the atmosphere of a water-type gym. With all that in mind, he looked back at Daisy and spoke on his silent observations. "You have a really nice place here. Everything is well decorated and it feels comfortable." "Ah well, thanks," the blonde teenager chirped in an airy fashion. "If there's one thing we know, it's design and fashion." Lily raised her finger and quipped. "Not to mention beauty and athleticism." Violet and Daisy both laughed girlishly at their sister's added self-summarization while Misty merely rolled her eyes and took a drink of her juice. Brock was smiling goofily with a red hue across his cheeks as he nodded rapidly in agreement at the redhead's assessment. Ash, though, pointed at a picture that was sitting in a frame atop a shelf in the corner. "Is that your parents by any chance?" The others turned to look where he was pointing. The picture was of a beautiful, fit older woman with reddish-orange hair and a tall, muscular-toned man with dark blonde hair standing next to her. The Cerulean gym was in the background and standing in front of the man and woman were Daisy, Lily and Violet when they were much younger. In the woman's arms was who had to have been a toddler Misty. "Yeah, that's Mom and Dad." Daisy spoke as her eyes softened. "Xenex and Liana. That was their names," Violet informed as she too stared fondly at the family picture. "Mom and Dad were total daredevils and met when they were deep-sea diving out in Sinnoh." Lily began. "They were actually both from here but fate just had it that they met at the same place, at the same time." Misty picked up the story from there. "Mom and Dad were also really good water Pokémon trainers and after they got married, they decided to stop traveling together and came back here to open the gym in their hometown." Daisy put a hand under her chin and smiled again. "They had me a short time after that, then V and Lils. Misty was the baby and didn't come along until later. They were totally awesome parents and took us to do all kinds of fun things. We were swimming when we were really little and working with the water Pokémon here at the gym when we were 8. Brock looked at them and spoke in a more solemn tone. "You lost your parents pretty young, right?" Misty and her sisters grew somber as the former nodded. "Yeah, they were on their way back from spelunking at the Cerulean cave and got into a bad wreck. It was late and the roads were really wet when another car cut them off at an intersection." Daisy sighed and moved her hand until her cheek was resting upon it instead. "After Mom and Dad died we had to take over the gym duties just to stay afloat and take care of ourselves. We had to put up with constant battling, training, really annoying social workers and raising Misty until we found a talent for putting on our shows. Lily winked and lifted her finger. After that we totally took off. We haven't had to worry about money or anything like that in forever. We make a total killing off putting on our shows and all the advertisement that comes with it. Violet shrugged. Plus the few little modeling gigs we get offered from time to time. Since she loves it so much, we just let Misty mostly take over gym leader duties as soon as she became certified. It was a total win situation until she up and decided to leave while running her big mouth about not coming back until she became a water Pokémon master. Daisy and Lily both closed their eyes and shook their heads at the same time. Totally ungrateful. And after all we did for her all this time. Misty's eye twitched. Seriously. You barely raised me at all when I was little, I had to mostly look after myself. And I took over gym leader duties because even though you three can battle, you spend most of your time fawning over your looks and doing your silly water shows. Violet frowned and raised her finger sternly. First of all Misty, they aren't silly little shows, it's a big part of our income. And secondly, we did a great job looking after you. The youngest of the four sisters looked to be in a mixed state of disbelief and sarcastic humor. Really? You think you did a good job raising me? I was cooking for myself when I was 8. Daisy looked at her and joined the debate. You like to criticize us and say that we did such a bad job looking after you, but let me ask you a few questions. She held up one finger after the other. Did you ever go hungry? Did you ever not have clothes to wear? Did we not take you shopping, teach you how to do things and show you the ropes of working with water types? Daisy herself finally frowned. No, we weren't mom and dad, there's no way we could have ever hoped to fill their shoes. We were just kids ourselves when they died, Misty. We were still young and trying to figure out what to do ourselves. We had no idea how we were going to help raise our little sister, so we did the best we could. Sue us for not being perfect, okay? Lily joined in. Yeah, and for your information, we were worried about you when you just up and took off without hardly telling us anything. Daisy concluded the conversation by giving Misty a surprisingly stern look. Rather out of place on her smooth, flawless complexion. We might really love fashion and design, and being this pretty does take a lot of work. And yeah, we put a lot into doing our water shows, but don't for a second try to make it sound like we just totally neglected you, Misty. At that, the orange-haired girl stood straight up from the table and looked at her sisters for a few moments before abruptly walking over to the door, slipping on her shoes and leaving the condo. The door making a resounding slam behind her in the process. There was silence in the room for a time after her abrupt departure. One where neither Ash or Brock, nor her sisters, said anything. At least not until Violet spoke with a sigh as she rubbed a hand across her forehead. So melodramatic. At last, Ash did say something as he looked around the table. Don't worry, I'll go find and talk to her. He glanced at Pikachu down in his lap and smiled. You gonna help me, buddy? As his first Pokémon gave a resounding Pika. In reply, Brock stood up suddenly with a finger to the air. And I'll start doing dishes and cleaning up from breakfast. Anxious to help ease the tension in the room, the squinty-eyed teen grabbed a few dishes and then headed over to the sink in the kitchen to start getting busy. Daisy, meanwhile, smiled gratefully at Ash and nodded. Thanks, Ash, I appreciate it. Modestly accepting her gratitude, the black-haired boy got up from the table and then went to get his shoes on. After that, and with Pikachu on his shoulder, the electric type having already eaten breakfast earlier, along with the other Pokémon, the tightly bonded duo left the gym in search of Misty. The boy and his Poké-companion looked around the immediate vicinity of the gym for their wayward friend, but, coming up short, Ash looked down at his Pokémon and asked. You think you might be able to smell which way she went, pal? Tilting his head at his trainer for a moment, Pikachu nodded and then looked forward again. Nose to the air, he sniffed for a few moments and, finally, his ears twitched as he looked back at Ash and started speaking rapidly. Pikachu Pikachu. Seeing him pointing off in a random direction that lead farther away from the gym, the boy smiled. Alright Pi, good job, lead the way. Pikachu took off after that and his trainer followed. Thus, they ran together through the park-like area that the gym was located within until, eventually, they came upon the scene of a small pond. And there, sitting at the edge with her feet in the water, was Misty. Stopping and collecting his thoughts for what he was going to have to say, Ash calmly walked over until he was standing behind her. Feeling as though she probably knew he was near, he asked, "Can I join you?" Arms around her knees, she simply shrugged and he sat down next to her. After a few moments of silence he eventually spoke. "I understand why you're so upset." She looked over at her friend and he glanced at the water of the pond. "My dad left to resume his journey before he even knew Mom was pregnant with me. I've often wondered what it would have been like to have him around. I spent a lot of my early childhood missing him and wishing he was home." He looked at her directly. "This isn't about your sisters but your parents, right?" Sighing, the orange-haired girl looked down at the water as well. "Yeah, I guess so. It's just, my sisters actually have memories of our parents but I don't. Daisy, Lily and Violet are vain and they can be more than a little airheaded sometimes, which drives me crazy. But, they weren't really all that bad." She hugged her knees tighter to herself. "I know they did their best to take care of me after Mom and Dad died and they were just kids themselves too. They fed me, they made sure I was dressed and taken care of. They did things with me too, even if I didn't always like everything they made me do. Like dressing up or doing makeup parties." A small smile came across her lips. "And I do have good memories with them. After our parents died, we were all that we had and we got close. We had to be. They did their best to keep things going and the water shows they started really were a big help. We wouldn't be as well off as we are now without them. And they taught me about water Pokémon when I was old enough." "But," Ash interjected for her, "you're a little jealous of them. They have memories of your parents but you don't." She nodded sorrowfully. "Yeah, growing up I always looked up to them. They're pretty, successful, they know what they want out of life, even if it's silly and shallow to me, and they knew our parents. I'm none of those things." At that he looked at her oddly. "What do you mean? I think you've got a lot to be proud of." She looked at him and he went on. "I mean yeah, seriously. You've got 3 sisters who may be a little overwhelming, sure, but at least you have family who loves you. Also, you have a passion for water Pokémon and you want to become the best at training them. A goal I bet you'll succeed at someday. Plus, I think you're pretty Misty, just like your sisters." The slightly older girl's cheeks turned a light shade of pink when she heard that. "Are really?" He nodded earnestly. "Yeah, of course. I wouldn't say it if it wasn't true." At his words, she smiled and looked back at the water of the pond. "Thanks Ash, you really helped me, with everything that you said." She then stood up and brushed the back of her shorts off. "I'm ready to head back I think." He stood as well and smiled when Pikachu climbed up his chest only to jump onto Misty's shoulder. "Hee, see that? He's trying to make you feel better too." She looked at the small Pokémon and her entire face lit up. "Aw thanks Pikachu, you're so sweet." Smiling in the lovable and adorable way he was quite adept at doing, Pikachu held up his little paw and chirped. "Pikachu Pika Pi Pika." With Misty successfully calmed, the 3 of them left the pond and headed back to the gym a short walk away. Although, upon arriving, they were met by Brock and Misty's sisters coming out to meet them in front of the gym. "Hey," she started to say a little awkwardly upon reaching them. "I just wanted to say," however, she was cut off by Daisy. "We're sorry Misty." The younger girl looked up in surprise hearing this as the blonde continued. "Sometimes we forget that you being younger than us means you go through things we don't think about or have forgotten." Lily also interjected. "Unlike us, you don't remember Mom and Dad and we know that, has to be hard. Yeah and we're sorry if you ever think we don't love you Misty because we totally do." Violet assured with a smile. Though definitely surprised by this, Misty was nonetheless very touched and responded in kind. "I'm sorry too. I should have never lost my temper like that but you were right. You three have memories of mom and dad but I don't. And, well, you're beautiful, you're successful and you know what you want to do with your life. Maybe I just get a little jealous sometimes." Her sisters appeared a little stunned at her words but Daisy eventually gave voice to what she found to be downright silly. "Misty, we might mess around with you but you don't need to be jealous of us. You're just as pretty as we were at your age and you're gonna become just as beautiful. And besides, you know what you wanna do, you want to become a water Pokémon master. And that's a totally cool goal." Violet and Lily both nodded in agreement and Misty, smiling softly at the kindness shown by her sisters, stepped forward and shared a hug with them. Seeing this, Ash went over to stand with Brock and crossed his arms. "It sure does do the heart good seeing something like this, huh Brock?" The teenaged breeder nodded in agreement while smiling as well. "Yeah, I'm glad to see them make up. Having siblings isn't easy but it can be the most rewarding thing in the world." After the intimate family moment had passed, Daisy looked over at Ash and smiled. "So Ash, are you ready to have that gym battle yet?" Violet put her hands to her hips. "Yeah, and have you decided who you want to battle?" The black-haired boy grinned in reply and looked up at Pikachu before nodding. "Yeah, actually, I have. I would like to battle all four of you for the gym badge." Misty and her sisters were all taken aback by this but she spoke on the matter. "All four?" He nodded again. "Yeah, that's right. You're one of the Cerulean gym leaders too Misty, I'd like to battle you as well. What do you say?" She shared a look with her sisters and Daisy shrugged. "Sure I'm game." "Me too, sounds totally cool." Lily agreed. "We've never battled like that before, I think it'd be neat." Violet also threw her weight behind the suggestion. Turning to look at her friend again, Misty offered him a competitive smile as the fire of battle entered her eyes. "Consider your challenge accepted Ash. I hope you know what you're getting yourself into. You're about to battle against the four sensational sisters of Cerulean City." She felt her heart swell with pride and acceptances. Instead of refuting the claim, her sisters all spoke together in like manner. "Totally." Ash and Pikachu both took up the gauntlet and showed solidarity and determination as trainer and Pokémon nodded firmly, readily. "We're ready when you are." Pikachu Pie. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX match around the gym's indoor aquatic battlefield. Ash and Pikachu were standing on one side of the rectangular pool in the trainer box, while Misty and her sisters were gathered on the other. Brock, meanwhile, had taken up a position at the head of the pool as the referee. "Alright, so who do you want to battle first, Ash?" Misty called out to him. The young rookie looked over the four pretty, familial siblings and eventually made his choice while pointing at Lily. "I want to battle her first." Lily. "Well, you're like, up Lils." Daisy turned to her sister. "Good luck." "Yeah, make us like, totally proud." Violet prompted while Misty wished her red-headed sister good battling as well. "Just leave it to me." Lily stepped into the trainer box on their end and pulled a Pokeball out from a pocket on her red skirt, enlarging it in the process. "Are you like, ready, Ash?" Having selected who he would use the night before via a quick swap with Professor Oak back home, Ash looked at the teenage beauty, who was wearing a white top and red skirt, and grinned. "Anytime you are." With that, Lily spun around and then released the Pokeball in her hand with the announcement of, "Seeking Let's Totally Dazzle." As the evolved and enlarged form of Goldeen appeared in the water with a wet, gulping sound of, seeking. Ash made his own selection with ease. "Here we go, girl, your first gym battle. I thought about this a lot last night and I know you'll be great for this one." Enlarging the ball he pulled from his belt, the tracksuit-wearing boy commanded. "Roselia, let's do it." Gracefully, the evolved Hoenn Pokémon appeared on one of the floating platforms in the water and twirled in place. Roselia. Seeing that the first Pokémon of the match had been decided, Brock called out. "This will be a one-on-one match between the challenger, Ash Ketchum of Pallet Town, and the four gym leaders of Cerulean City, Daisy, Lily, Violet and Misty Waterflower." He held up one hand. These matches will have no time limit, and if the challenger loses one of the 4, he will lose the whole bout. The gym leaders are the only ones who may not substitute Pokémon. He then raised both of his arms into the air. If both trainers are ready, then let the battle begin. Misty looked at her other 2 sisters. It's a good thing Brock was here to referee. Where is Billy? Referring to their gym's official ref, Daisy waved her hand. Oh, he had to go out of town for a few days. Something about family matters or whatever. At that moment, the battle finally began in earnest. Seeking. Dive down into the water and then come up and hit Roselia with horn attack, Lily commanded with outstretched arm as her Pokémon quickly dove down into the water and then swam at a fast pace toward the other side of the watery battlefield. Roselia, use growth and root yourself to the ground. Ash advised as the routine feeling of eerie calm he always felt during battle settled over him again. At that very moment, Seeking exploded out of the water and dove straight down toward the grass type with the horn atop its head glowing and extended. Roselia, however, merely stood rooted to the platform while glowing with a faint green color from the effects of using growth. At that very same moment, Ash called out without so much as a second of hesitation. Now reach up and grab Seeking. What? Lily questioned, her face taking on a look of surprise. At that moment, Roselia put her viney arms out and stared down her incoming foe with unbreakable focus. Seeking slammed into her but, amazingly, she stood firmly rigid and caught the fish Pokémon in between her flowery hands. Not missing a step, Ash gave a second command. Now use Mega Drain. As soon as the stamina-stealing glow of said move began to take effect, Seeking began rapidly losing vitality as its energy was sucked out by Roselia's powerful Mega Drain. Lily herself, even for all of her experience, was too stunned to react. She knew that her Seeking had a powerful horn attack, and for a Pokémon as seemingly flimsy and physically weak as Roselia to be able to just stop a heavy fish that was dropping from the air, with gravity and speed on its side at that, was baffling to her. Add onto that the fact that Roselia hadn't only stopped her Pokémon's descent but caught it, and without being budged even an inch at that, suddenly made her feel far less confident about her chances in the current match. Now Roselia, end this by throwing Seeking into the air and then hitting it, full power. Lily was stunned out of her reverie at the boy's command just as Roselia tossed Seeking into the air, leapt up after it and then slammed both of her flowered hands into the water type with shockingly powerful force. Like a streaking, finned comet, Seeking flew across the pool and slammed into the platform Lily was standing on. Eyes reduced to swirls and a pained grunt of, "See, King," escaping its fishy maw. Seeing this, Brock raised his hand in the direction of Ash. Seeking is unable to battle. Since gym leader Lily has lost her Pokémon, the win for this first match goes to Ash and Roselia. Still stunned that they had been defeated so quickly, the red-headed beauty stared at her beaten Pokémon with her mouth slightly agape in shock. Though it was an equally gobsmacked Violet that spoke up for them all. No way. That wasn't even 5 minutes. Daisy also seemed amazed at what they had just seen, but Misty could only smile in a knowing manner. That's Ash for you. Even for a new trainer, he's really trained his Pokémon well. At last, Lily returned her Pokémon and smiled at its Pokeball. Thanks Seeking, you did super amazing. Take a long rest. Afterward, she stepped back off the platform and looked at her sisters. Don't underestimate him girls, that kid is totally the real deal. Looking among themselves, Violet nodded and decided to take the initiative. Alright I'll go next. She then stepped out onto the floating platform and furrowed her brow in a focused line of determination. Seeing they were both ready for the second round, Brock called out. If the challenger and gym leader are both ready, then please choose your Pokémon. Wearing a pair of black pants and a green top, Violet pulled a Pokeball from her pocket and enlarged it. Alright Shelder, let's win this one for Lils and Seeking. Ash looked at his evolved Pokémon and smiled. Roselia, you did a great job. Do you want to stay in? Roselia. She looked back and nodded firmly. The black-haired boy looked across the pool to Violet and yelled, "You can have the first move, we're ready." The dark-haired beauty smirked and stepped back. Well aren't you a gentleman? Fine, Shellder use shell smash. Roselia dodged by hopping to the next platform. Ash called out quickly just as the bivalve water type shot off from the far platform with surprising speed, its small shell encased in glowing bright light. The fleet-footed grass type waited until just the right moment and then jumped gracefully to the next platform over, thereby causing Shellder to miss its mark as it struck the hard white surface Roselia had just been standing on. Violet wasn't about to let Ash have any room to make a counter-strategy though and maintained the aggressive offense she started with. Shellder used Ice Beam. The rookie in question wasn't to be outdone though as he swifty ordered, into the water Roselia. Hearing this, all three of Misty's sisters exclaimed in equal states of shock, their eyes wide. What? Just then Roselia dove gracefully into the water, missing the chilling beam of ice right as it impacted where she had once stood, leaving a chunk of crystalline ice on the platform. At that same moment though, Violet suddenly had a thought and smirked while looking down at the water. You really messed up now. Shellder use Ice Beam again on the water. Daisy smiled triumphantly. Woo. Way to go V. Ash really messed up this time. Water freezes and grass types are super weak against ice. The palette native simply remained calm though and yelled loud enough for his Pokémon to hear under the water. Roselia used Mega Drain to come right up under the platform Shellder is on. To the astonishment of all who were watching, Roselia began pushing herself through the water rapidly and at high speeds by using the ethereal tendrils of Mega Drain like makeshift fins. The dark green aura of energy now shrouding her effectively made the graceful grass type seem like some type of moving green anomalous object beneath the surface of the pool. Everyone aside from Ash just stared in utter amazement as Roselia suddenly came shooting up out of the water just as Shellder fired another ice beam, which instantly began freezing over a large section of the top of the pool with a thin sheet of ice. While the Hoenn grass Pokémon was still in the air, her trainer shouted, Roselia give them a razor leaf and then follow it up with leech seed. Roselia reared back and then thrust her flowery hands forward as a hail of sharp leaves went cascading down onto Shellder and struck the unprepared water type head-on, doing massive damage in the process. After that, Roselia landed on the nearest platform while aiming at the now heavily injured Shellder with the red rose on her right hand. From it she shot a small little seed through the air and onto Violet's Pokémon, which wrapped it up tightly in spindly vines and immediately began sapping it of all of its strength. Within the span of only a few moments, the bright, botanical electric charge enveloping Shellder came to its natural end and left its victim lying flat on the ground with swirls in its eyes. Seeing the pre-evolved form of Cloyster laying unconscious on the platform directly in front of Violet, Brock held up his hand. Shellder is unable to battle. The winner of this second match is Ash and Roselia. While stunned and no less disappointed that she had been defeated as quickly as her sister, Violet nonetheless returned her beaten Pokémon and smiled. Thank you Shellder, you did your best. Totally. She then walked off the floating platform and smiled apologetically at her sisters. Sorry girls, I just couldn't pull it off. Daisy consoled the dark-haired beauty though with a head shake. Don't worry about it sis, I'll take over from here. You did super awesome. With that said, the bombshell blonde and eldest Waterflower stepped onto the platform and pulled a Pokeball out of the long white pants she was wearing. She had on a pink top. Come on Daisy you can do it. Misty cheered her sister on, bolstered by Lily and Violet at the same time. Yeah you go girl. Ash looked at Roselia again and asked out of concern for her for the second time. You've battled twice in a row now Roselia, you wanna take a rest yet? Much like the first time he asked though, she simply waved off his concern and focused her attention squarely on the third match about to take place. Smiling at her resolve, the young man held up a clenched fist and nodded. Alright then let's go 3 for 3. From down at his side, Pikachu also made proclamation for his teammate and did so with both little paws in the air. Pie Pikachu Pikachu pie. Not needing any prompting from Brock this time, Daisy enlarged the ball she held and tossed it skyward gracefully. Seal, let's show them you can be beautiful as a waterflower but fierce as the sea. As the silky white, sleek-furred seal appeared on the floating platform ahead of Daisy, Brock held his arms up. If both challenger and gym leader are ready, then let the match begin. Daisy quickly took command. Seal, in the water and use like, ice beam. Roselia. Ash yelled in response. Jump to the next platform and use growth while you do it to build your strength. Just as the ice-type mammal dove into the water and rose swiftly to shoot a beam of ice at her, Roselia showed that 2 matches had done little to drain her stamina as she leapt to the next platform quickly. All while glowing greenish-yellow as she used growth. However, to their credit, Seal's last attack had no more than missed its target just a split second before Daisy was giving another command. Use Ice Beam again where Roselia is going to land. Loving the pace of fast-moving battles, Ash smirked. Roselia, use Razor Leaf behind yourself to gain momentum and push your way through the air to the platform next to that one. Turning in mid-air, she perfectly executed the order by launching a flurry of leaves that pushed her farther through the air and onto the next platform over, effectively avoiding the second ice beam. Daisy, having learned from watching her other sisters battle the talented young trainer, knew not to let up for a moment lest he rapidly turn the tables. Therefore she held out her hand and shouted, "Seal, use multiple aurora beams and don't let up." Deciding to take an evasive and more tactical approach, Ash gave a simple command. Roselia, dance. While said order confused the others watching, the female grass type understood perfectly and then waited until Seal had charged up and fired a shining, multicolored beam of energy at her. Suddenly, just before it could hit, the now smirking flower Pokémon vaulted high in the air, spinning gracefully in the process before sticking a perfect landing on the next platform. Undeterred, Seal continued to fire shimmering beam after shimmering beam at the mobile target, but each time, Roselia simply jumped, spun, leapt and pirouetted out of the way. Usually onto another platform, just like she were dancing. Finally, Ash decided to take action and swiftly called out. Use Leech Seed on every platform and tie them together with Ingrain. Without breaking stride or grace, Roselia continued to dodge all of Seal's attacks in the same manner as before. Only now, each time she landed she quickly placed a small leech seed pod on the platform in question with the red flower on her right. Just before the need to leap away from another aurora beam arrived, she used the blue flower on her left to connect a small chain of roots to the seed pod. After that, she would jump away to the next platform while carrying the long line of roots with her. Roselia would then plant another leech seed pod and do the same thing to it before leaping off once more. While Daisy, and everyone else watching for that matter, didn't understand Ash's odd strategy, she was weary enough by now not to take chances. While she wanted to have Seal use Aurora or Ice Beam to preemptively attack and destroy the energy-draining seed pods Roselia had planted on almost every platform in the pool, she knew it wouldn't happen. Unfortunately, after expending so much energy in an effort to hit Roselia, Seal was starting to tire and she could see it. Therefore, her first instinct was to make sure that the witty grass type did not manage to hit Seal with any such stamina-sucking attack. In her Pokémon's current condition, she knew that would mean game over. Like, I don't know why you wasted so much time planting seeds, but as long as we don't touch them, we're fine. She boldly declared to the nonplussed-looking rookie. Ash, for his part, only gave a small smile and decided to switch gears. Let's go on the offensive now, girl, use Razor Leaf. With a high leap into the air, the evolved form of Badoo spun around thrice before extending her petals downward and voicing the impending attack with a forceful, Celia. Just as the unleashed storm of leaves came raining down from above towards Seal, Daisy acted quickly to save her Pokémon from certain defeat. Though, since every other platform had been planted with leech seed pods, she didn't want to take the chance of Seal touching one in its tired state. Therefore, she called out, Seal into the water. While the ice-type Seal hurriedly dove into the water to avoid the pelting of sharp leaves that hammered down onto the platform it had just been resting on, the pool soon proved to be the farthest thing from a sanctuary of safety. In fact, it had played right into Ash's hands. All right, Roselia. He lifted a fist into the air. Activate those seed pods and link them together with one last engrain. Landing out of her jump on the platform that Seal had just been occupying, which was also the only one not to have a seed pod on it, Roselia held her petals out to both platforms that were on either side of her. Those same beautiful flower hands glowed just before two thick, twin roots shot out of them and attached to the seed pods that were on either platform next to her. Doing this acted like completing a circuit since, all at once, every seed pod she planted sprouted, came to life and started to buzz and crackle with botanical, life-draining electricity. Since all the seed pods were connected by the roots of engrain, the electrical charge traveled from platform to platform until soon, it looked like a haphazard electric fence had been installed above the pool. Since Roselia was at the center of this, the electric charge ended up being fed to her via the roots she was holding onto, and as soon as the crackling arcs touched her, she winced and staggered a little in pain. Even though she was being zapped by her own move, she nonetheless remained focused and squinted one eye open. While Daisy, her sisters and even Brock had not the faintest inkling what Ash had planned, he soon revealed his whole hand. Now dive straight into the water, Roselia. Not questioning her trainer for a minute, Roselia leapt straight into the pool while still holding onto the roots. To that end, the results of the boy's brilliant strategy was revealed. Since the arcing bolts of leech seed's energy-draining static acted so much like grass-type electricity, when Roselia went into the water it had the same effect as normal electricity would. Before the eyes of all watching, the entire pool soon became lit up in a bright light show display of arcing, crackling, bluish-green electricity. The kind which not only danced wildly across the surface of the water but also beneath as well. Alas, for Seal there was no place left to hide. As soon as Roselia entered the water, she brought the energy-draining electrical charge of leech seed with her, and it only took a few milliseconds for it to locate the submerged ice type. The light being given off from the electrical surge was so bright that no one could look directly at the pool. All were forced to turn away and hide their eyes. For what felt like forever for some, namely Daisy and her sisters, the pool arced, crackled and buzzed before, finally, the unorthodox power surge died down. When they did and everyone was finally able to look again, a strange sight awaited. Even though the event had mostly ended, the leech seed pods were still crackling faintly on each platform, and that thereby caused the water to shoot up occasional sparks of the faux, botanical electricity as well. At long last, after searching the water with their eyes for several agonizing moments, movement finally stirred as the pool exploded upward in a shower of water droplets. From this came Roselia, who landed on the nearest platform in a partly kneeling position with water cascading down her form. Seconds later, Seal appeared near the center of the pool as well. Although, sadly for Daisy, her Pokémon was belly up with swirls in its eyes and phantom sparks of electricity still crackling along its body. Seeing the battle was officially over, Brock once more raised an arm in Ash's direction and announced, "Seal is unable to battle. That means the victory for this third match goes to Ash and Roselia." Smiling sadly, Daisy held up her Pokémon's ball and returned it. Thanks Seal. You were super totally amazing, take a nice rest." After that, she turned back to her sisters and shrugged in a modest manner. It looks like it's up to you, Misty." Violet turned to her sister. "Yeah Misty, it's up to you to fight for the name of the Cerulean gym." Her attention was shifted to her other side where Lily nodded in agreement. "You can totally do it, little sister." Smiling at her elder sister's words of encouragement and good faith, Misty allowed a determined look to cross her face as she held her fists up to her chest. "I won't let you down, I'll give it my all." In only a short span of time, the orange-haired girl was facing down her newly made friend as she and Ash stood on opposite ends of the pool. Both looked intense and ready for battle as Misty called out, "I hope you're ready, Ash, I'm not gonna go easy on you." "I wouldn't want it any other way," he replied back with an excited smile upon his face. Brock looked between the two of them and then started to speak. "This will be the last match of this gym bout. Same rules apply as before, trainers please choose your Pokémon." At that, Ash called out to his friend and soon-to-be opponent again. Hey Misty, what say we make this more interesting and have a 2-on-2 battle? She put her hands on her hips and smirked. Sounds great to me. Hearing that, Brock nodded. Very well, this will now be a 2-on-2 match to decide the winner of this gym challenge. Whenever both competitors are ready, please choose your Pokémon. Alright, it's time to stand up for the honor of our gym. Misty removed her large red travel bag and reached inside, pulling out a Pokeball which she enlarged before spinning in place once and then tossing it. Staryu, let's go. In a flash of light, the star-shaped water type appeared on the same platform in front of Misty that her other sister's Pokémon had also. Spinning in place, it gave a crisp star and settled in for battle. Hey Roselia, you did good, but I want you to come back now, okay? Ash spoke to his 3-time victorious Pokémon. While she looked back at him in surprise and voiced it with a questioning, Celia. He smiled and shook his head. You did great, but I don't like sticking with the same strategy repeatedly. Besides, we need to give the others a chance to battle too. The prim and graceful grass type merely gave an understanding shrug and, seeing this, Ash smiled and held out her Pokeball. Cool, thanks for understanding Roselia, you did an awesome job, girl. Once he had returned the Hoenn native Pokémon, the black-haired boy thought for a few seconds before making his next choice. Holding up the ball containing said contestant, he enlarged it and then released it from his hand. Cleffa, let's see what you can do. From the burst of light that escaped the Pokeball came the small, rare fairy type that Ash had befriended and captured in MT. Moon, announcing herself with a cute call of, Clef Cleffa. While her sisters all couldn't help but to exclaim aloud at how adorable the little Pokémon was, Misty knew better than to take such things for granted. Especially when it came to him. Therefore, moving fast and with no hesitation, she gave the first order of the battle. Staryu, use water gun. Ash, on the other hand, was just as ready. Cleffa, dodge it. Just as the starfish Pokémon fired a fast hydrant of water at her, Cleffa hopped out of the way and landed on the next platform over. Her small size making it easier to dodge quickly. Staryu, go under the water and then come up and hit Cleffa with rapid spin. Misty shouted, aggressively pressing the attack. Wait for it. Ash instructed. Just wait. Cleffa stood her ground, without moving a muscle, and just as Staryu came up out of the water to hit her, Ash called out, now Cleffa, drop down and avoid that attack. As soon as Staryu passes over you, hit it with magical leaf. Misty eyes went wide and she tried to counter by saying, Staryu, dawn. But she wasn't quick enough. Looking up and from her tiny hands, a glowing bombardment of leaves came from Cleffa and struck Staryu straight in the center of its gem. The resulting effect sent the water type flying back through the air and landing on a platform away with a painful sounding thud. Staryu struggled back up to its feet after enduring the super effective attack, and its orange-headed trainer was proven to be just as determined. Staryu, use recover. From that same gem in the center of its body, a golden glow began to shine and gradually encompass Staryu's body as its health was restored in seconds. Misty smirked seeing this and raised her hand. Great, Staryu. Now use water gun again and then dive back into the pool. Ash ordered Cleffa to jump out of the way of the watery attack seconds before it hit, while Staryu leapt into the pool again. Afterward, she stood in place and looked from one side of the floating platform to the next, trying to locate her opponent just as Misty shouted, now Staryu, use swift. The pre-evolved form of Starmie emerged from the water in a heartbeat and spun high in the air before firing off several golden stars of energy at Cleffa. This caught her unawares, and when the attack hit, it sent her flying back onto the platform behind her. Misty didn't stop there though. Staryu used a non-stop rapid spin. From its place high in the air, Staryu started to spin rapidly and then dropped down toward Cleffa fast, striking her with a direct blow and launching her into the air. The rotating water type managed to speed ahead of her though and hit Cleffa again, knocking her in the opposite direction. From there, Staryu made repeated use of the same technique and commenced to bouncing Ash's Pokémon all across the pool like a brightly colored ball. When the series of painful hits finally came to an end, Staryu clobbered its smaller opponent one last time and allowed Cleffa to drop down and hit the platform below with bruising force. Misty felt certain that she had won the round upon seeing this but was instead shocked when, a few moments later, Cleffa slowly stood up again, battered and bruised but standing nonetheless. Ash smiled proudly seeing his newest little Pokémon's determination and acted on it. "Alright Cleffa, good job for hanging in there. Let's turn the tide now." To her credit, Misty quickly overcame her shock and refocused on the task at hand. Back into the water Staryu. Her Pokémon dove back into the pool without hesitation and Ash smirked when he saw this. "Cleffa, get ready." She nodded firmly and stood her ground just as Misty yelled once more, "Staryu come out of the water," and hit Cleffa with another rapid spin. His mind working quickly, Ash countered just as the starfish erupted from the water and came spinning toward them. Dodge to the side and then grab onto Staryu's gem. Just as the rapidly rotating Pokémon came upon her, Cleffa made use again of her small size and ducked down while moving to the side. Then, just as it was passing her by, she leapt onto the gem in Staryu's center and latched on tight. Since she was small enough, Cleffa resembled a pink growth attached to the water type as it spun on with her tagging along. Misty tried to take some form of action by shouting, "Staryu keep spinning," and try to shake it off. Ash however, merely smirked. "I don't think so Misty." Cleffa used Sweet Kiss on Staryu and then let go. Cleffa did just as she was told and then planted a cute, magically influenced kiss on Staryu's gem before letting go and dropping down onto the nearest platform under her. As for her former ride however, it was now hopelessly confused from the mind-scrambling kiss and started to haphazardly spin around the gym in random directions. Eventually, Staryu lost all control and spun at full speed toward the back wall before smashing into it, impacting the hard surface with enough force to actually get stuck. "Staryu, try and get free," Misty urged desperately, sensing the impending climax of defeat. Ash raised his hand. "Not this time. Cleffa, use magical leaf and don't stop." From where she stood on her floating platform, Cleffa once more raised her small hands and let loose a storm of brightly glowing leaves that washed upon Staryu like a cannon of grass-type fury. Misty could do nothing but watch helplessly as her trapped Pokémon was bombarded by the onslaught with no means of escape. When the intense flurry of leaves finally ended, Staryu dislodged from the wall and fell to the ground below. As it lay deflated on the hard surface, the red gem in the water-type's center blinked weakly to show its defeat. "Staryu is unable to battle." Brock raised his hand and announced. "The winner is Cleffa." Misty, smiling softly, returned Staryu and thanked her Pokémon for its hard work before choosing her next and final Pokéball, which she tossed upward while yelling, "It's not over yet Ash. Starmie, let's do it." As the evolved form of Staryu appeared in much the same manner as its younger cousin had before it, Ash and Pikachu cheered Cleffa's victory while she bounced excitedly over to them. "Woo!" The boy pumped his fist skyward as Pikachu did the same. "Pikachu!" He then knelt down and caught Cleffa as she bounced into his arms while smiling brightly. "That was an amazing battle Cleffa, you were awesome." "Pikachu Pika Pipe Pikachu Pika." The electric type agreed heartily while Cleffa waved her hands around jubilantly. "Clef Clef Cleffa." After he was done congratulating her, Ash returned Cleffa to her ball and then examined Starmie closely for a few moments before looking down at his first Pokémon. "What do you think, Pi? Should we let Mankey have a go?" Pikachu nodded in agreement. "Pika." Grabbing said Pokémon's ball, Ash enlarged it and smirked. "Okay, then let's do it." Releasing the ball into the air, he called out loud, "Mankey, let's take this one home." Exploding with force from his Pokeball, Mankey beat his fists on the ground before raising them above his head and bellowing, "Mankey! Mankey Mankey Mankey! Ew, like, such a brutish Pokemon." Lily commented with a disdainfully upturned lip at the bellicose fighting type. "Do you think Misty can win?" Violet turned to her elder sister but Daisy merely smiled. "Oh, I totally know she can. She's like a waterflower." "Yeah," the other two agreed before they all started to cheer their little sister on. "Come on Misty, you can do it, totally. Yeah, don't give up little sister." Make mom and dad proud, girl. All words in which served to bolster Misty as she felt her heart warm and a smile come to her face hearing her sister's praise. Brock, as observant referee, looked at both sides before finally raising and then lowering his arms down quickly. Let the final battle of this match begin. Starmie, use swift now. Misty, urged on by her sister's words, took point without missing a beat. Mankey, use focus energy and jump to the next platform. The raven-haired boy swiftly charged in retaliation. The brightly shining shower of stars missed their mark as Mankey, glowing red with a pumped-up burst of vitality, leapt powerfully to the next platform. Then, like a machine on two legs, he began hopping from floating square to floating square with sights firmly set on the enemy. Starmie, get into the water quickly. Misty urged, desperate to make sure her Pokémon stayed well out of Mankey's reach. She knew that if the fighting type managed to unleash any of its brutal barrages on Starmie, the match would most likely be over. The dark blue starfish disappeared into the large pool, but Ash followed suit. Mankey dived into the water after Starmie. Misty's face immediately took on an expression of disbelief. Why her friend, as unorthodox as he was, would order his Pokémon into an aquatic battle with a trained water type was well beyond her. Knowing him though, it made her suspicious and she wasn't keen on giving him any sort of edge. Starmie start using rapid spin underwater. Ash, however, proved her suspicions true as he smirked. Mankey, let's show them water types aren't the only ones who can fight in the water. As a now rapidly spinning Starmie closed in on Mankey underwater, the lithe primate simply swam away quickly to the side in a maneuver much faster than anyone would have thought possible for him. Starmie continued trying to hit the surprising simian, but Mankey demonstrated skillful aquatic ability as he fluidly dodged in a variety of different directions. Now grab a hold of Starmie on its next pass and hit it with a barrage, Mankey. Ash yelled loud enough for his Pokémon to hear underwater. Timing his moment just right, Mankey barrel rolled to the side to avoid Starmie's next underwater charge but quickly righted himself in order to reach out and grab hold of one of the starfish's pointed ends. Tightening his grip, Mankey yanked his opponent close and then began unleashing a truly brutal barrage of overwhelming kicks, punches and even headbutts on the captured water type. Mankey finally stopped the onslaught by spinning Starmie around and then chucking it towards the bottom of the pool with a surprisingly forceful, underwater seismic toss. Even though the relative weightlessness of being submersed should have slowed Starmie's descent, the ravaged water type dropped to the bottom of the pool and struck the concrete base with some degree of force regardless. Finally needing air, Mankey swam quickly back to the surface and leapt out of the water, landing on one of the floating platforms while shaking his soaked fur wildly. Within mere seconds he had regained his breath and was once more beating his hairy fists to the ceiling. Mankey. Ash saw the looks of astonishment on the faces of nearly everyone present and smirked. You're not surprised, are you, Misty? You know I'm not normal when it comes to training my Pokémon. I want them to be able to fight in the water the same as on land. It was at that moment that Starmie finally rose again to the surface and just barely managed to jump out of the water onto the nearest platform. Though the beating it had taken was evident from the way it stood with drooping points. Starmie, use recovery to regain your strength, Misty advised with an audible tone of worry in her voice. She was now truly beginning to fear that her new friend, and a rookie trainer at that, might just defeat her. In a total sweep no less. A thought she didn't want to even consider unless she had done everything possible in her power to prevent it. However, the young greenhorn in question wouldn't make turning the tables easy. Mankey, get in close to Starmie and use Mega Punch, Low Kick and Seismic Toss. Before she could tell Starmie to abort, Mankey had already sped across the other platforms, separating the two of them in a dizzying flurry of movement. Coming to stand directly in front of the blue starfish with an imposing stature. Eyes narrowed fiercely, Mankey cocked his right fist back and then thrust it forward, straight into Starmie's red gem with crippling force. Just as it stumbled back from the powerful Mega Punch, Starmie lost all footing completely when the fighting type dropped down, spun around and swept its pointed legs out from under it using Low Kick. Reaching down quickly, Mankey grabbed hold of Starmie and then leapt into the air with ease. Spinning around in a full frontward rotation, the manic and temperamental Pokémon flexed his arms and then tossed his load back to the ground with a loud grunt of Mankey. When Starmie hit the floating platform below, it did so with ricocheting force and caused the large aquatic tile to rock and shift violently back and forth. The impact was great enough that waves were made in the wake of Starmie's landing and rushed outward in all directions across the pool. The chaotic and turbulent movement of the platform came to an end as Mankey dropped down onto it and landed on top of his felled opponent, an action which caused the platform to sink down for a moment before popping back up again. While he stood over top of his enemy with a ferocious gleam in his eyes and an intimidating snarl on his lips, the aggressive fighting type heard Ash command, "Use a rapid combination Mega Punch." Full power Mankey. Vocalizing his passion-filled hunger for battle, Ash's first and only fighting Pokémon held both fists up and then, just as they started to glow, he hammered both of them down onto Starmie at one time, commencing what became a savage assault of repeated blows that the overwhelmed starfish was utterly incapable of defending against. Misty could only stare in woeful suspense as her Pokémon was brutally beaten until, finally, Mankey threw one last punch and stopped. Looking down, he saw Starmie's gem blinking, showing that the beleaguered water type was fully unconscious. Though it took great control to stop his assault and quail his savage, brawl-loving nature, Mankey managed to hold onto his right state of mind and stood erect again. With a rapid beating to his chest, the pre-evolved form of Primate chanted his victory for all to hear for a few moments before jumping back across the pool to his trainer's side. "Starmie is unable to battle," Brock announced with his arm raised. "Since he has defeated all 4 gym leaders, I hereby declare the challenger Ash Ketchum to be the victor of this match." While the excited and victorious rookie knelt down and happily congratulated Mankey on his win, alongside an equally as enthused Pikachu, Misty smiled sadly and returned her defeated Pokémon. "I'm sorry you guys." She slowly turned to look back at her sisters. "I tried my hardest but I just couldn't do it." "What are you like, kidding?" Violet exclaimed. "That was like a great battle." "Yeah, you totally lasted longer than we did," Lily added. Daisy smiled at her baby sister and shook her head. "Misty, you were great. Like, I can totally see now who inherited mom and dad's knack for battling. You're awesome. Ash is just like a really tough trainer." A soft smile crossed the Oranguette's lips upon hearing those words. "You three, thank you. Really, that means a lot to me." Walking over to their side of the pool with Pikachu and Mankey in tow, Ash smiled brightly. "Misty, that was an awesome match, seriously." His friend looked at him while Brock came up to join them and returned the smile. "Thanks Ash, you guys were great too. We did our best but there's no denying you were the fair winner." "Congratulations." Her sisters joined in as well. "So totally rad Ash." Violet gushed. "Our battle was like the tops. Yeah, I haven't had that much fun in a battle in like forever." Lily stated sincerely, followed by Daisy eyes smiling. "You really gave me and Seal a super workout Ash, great job." The modest young man smiled and rubbed the back of his neck. "Aw, I really appreciate it but my Pokémon are the reason why we won. And you girls were a really tough battle, all 4 of you." Just then, before anyone else could speak, a loud rumbling was suddenly heard just outside the gym. Specifically, over behind the far wall across from the pool. "Like, what is that?" Lily was forced to shout as the rumbling grew even louder, followed by the side of the wall in question actually beginning to shake. Within only seconds, all chaos broke loose as a loud explosion rocked the gym and a large portion of the back wall blew in. The explosion itself was powerful enough that it nearly knocked all of them off their feet as debris and chunks of rubble went flying. When the sudden uproar of the surprise explosion had died down, a gaping hole was left in the back part of the gym. There were also large pieces and chunks of the destroyed wall now littering the battlefield and floating all across the pool. "What the heck just happened?" Misty demanded as she looked around and beheld the now destroyed state of the battlefield. "Like, who is responsible for this?" Daisy demanded with an angry edge to her tone. The response came from the now gaping and massive hole in the gym's back wall, which gave full view of the outside beyond. Standing in the hole that had been blasted into the gym were three figures that Ash and Misty recognized immediately. "Prepare for trouble," the woman began. "And make it double," finished the man. "To protect the world from devastation." She lifted her gloved finger to the air. "To unite all people within our nation." Her male companion did the same. "To denounce the evils of truth and love." The redhead smirked. "To extend our reach to the stars above." The blue-haired man flipped his hair back with one hand and did the same. Team Rocket blast off at the speed of. The woman went to continue before Ash interrupted with a loud, "You three again. I thought we took care of you already." The trio of villainous rockets, Jesse, James and Meowth, all scowled in unison at him, with the magenta-haired female snapping back a fiery retort. "How dare you interrupt our motto, you little brat." Misty pointed at the bumbling threesome with fury in her eyes. "How dare you three do this to my family's gym? You blew a hole in the wall. What in the world is wrong with you?" James smirked and crossed his arms. "Well, it's not like we knew who this gym belonged to, but now that we do, it makes it all the sweeter. Yeah, we didn't know you twerps would be here when we cased a joint, but now that we do, I'd say it's our lucky day." Meowth smirked fiendishly and put his paws on his hips. "Misty, you know these three?" Daisy questioned her sister in surprise. The orange-haired girl nodded and scowled. "Unfortunately, Ash and I met them in Viridian City when they tried to steal all the Pokémon at the Pokémon Center. They're the reason it blew up." Brock looked at his friends and asked, "Are these the three weirdos you guys told me about?" "Yeah, and I hoped we wouldn't see them again, but I guess that just wasn't in the cards." Ash sighed in frustration while Pikachu sparked his cheeks angrily. "Pika. Who are you calling weirdos?" Jesse growled. "You troublesome little twerps still don't understand just who you're dealing with." Slowly, a smirk came across her face. "But you will soon." Meowth smirked in a way that showed all of his pointed feline teeth. "I told yas dat we didn't need no more C4 dan we sent to headquarters for. We'da used too much more and we might have blown up da twerps and dear super rare Pikachu." James cackled. "I wouldn't personally mind doing away with the twerps, but it'd be a shame to lose such a great Pikachu in the process. I agree. Now James, show them why we came." Jessie instructed as she crossed her arms beneath her bust while her eyes glinted devilishly. "Gladly," he replied just before reaching into his vest shirt and withdrawing the industrial water vacuum they had stolen. Though currently, it was still miniaturized. He also pulled out the same small black box he had used to shrink it and held both up at the same time. "Just like, what do you want here anyway?" Violet demanded. Instead of replying, James just set the small vacuum down and placed the black box behind it. Afterward he flipped a switch on the latter and stood back as it came to life and started to glow. A few moments later, a bright beam of white energy shot from the black box and hit the pool draining machine, which caused the stolen piece of hardware to quickly begin growing and expanding in size until, in only seconds, it had returned to its former, massive state. What is that?" Daisy questioned with wide eyes. As James picked up and tossed the large water hose connected to the machine into the pool, Jessie smirked and held up the remote control that went to it. "It's just a little present from us to you, enjoy." She then pressed a red button on the remote and caused the machine to roar to life as the vacuum hose began sucking up the water in the pool, like a Snorlax drinking from a giant straw. "We'll make it easy for ya, give us all da Pokemon in dis gym or we'll flood da whole building and all of yous with it." "Never," Misty shouted back vehemently over the loud ruckus caused by the machine. "You can forget it, Meowth." By this point, all the floating platforms in the pool were beginning to spin and spiral around as a large vortex started to form in the center of where the vacuum hose was. "Misty, we gotta stop 'em." Ash looked at his orange-headed friend, who nodded in turn. "Right." She then pulled out another Pokeball and released it from her grasp with a yell of, "Goldeen, let's go." After her white and orange speckled water type appeared in the water in a burst of light, Ash pointed toward the machine. "Pikachu, go and help Goldeen destroy that thing." Pika. Leaping out onto one of the platforms that was now widdly rocking this way and that, the little yellow electric type took off leaping from place to place while Goldeen swam forward against the vacuuming current. Just as they neared the center of the pool where the hose was located, Pikachu's cheeks sparking and Goldine's horn extended like a glowing javelin. The force of the vacuuming water caused the platform Pikachu was standing on to get ripped out from underneath of him. With a surprised cry of, "Pika!" he fell straight into the water. The platform he had been standing on was flung in Goldine's direction and smacked into Misty's Pokémon, causing it to lose control of itself and spin off course. This also caused Goldine to become trapped up in the powerful vortex being created by the vacuum. Seeing this, both Ash and Misty called out to their Pokémon in great concern, with the former taking action without pausing for thought. As he saw both of their Pokémon being pulled toward the hose connected to the machine, his worry and concern for them outweighed any potential risks. With a loud shout of, "I'm coming!" he ran toward the pool and dove in. Mankey was following right behind on his heels, showing great loyalty to his trainer that he was willing to put himself into such danger for Ash. "Ash, wait!" Misty called out fearfully for her friend as he rose back to the surface and started swimming as fast as possible toward Pikachu and Goldine. Misty's sisters gasped as they saw this while Brock shouted, "Ash, be careful! That vacuum is really powerful and you could get hurt." Fighting and struggling against the strong pull of the suctioning current, the raven-haired boy continued swimming desperately with Mankey following behind as close as possible. "I have to get to them," he gasped over the water that tried to flood into his mouth. Jessie and the other two Rockets merely laughed mockingly at what they were seeing. "It looks like we might end up having a waterlogged twerp." The magenta-haired female laughed cruelly while James and Meowth stood smirking at the edge of the pool, confident in their victory. When Ash finally managed to reach Pikachu, he lunged forward and wrapped his arms around his first Pokémon. "Got ya!" He turned and felt the current pulling him backward while Mankey grabbed onto Goldine and tried to right the floundering fish. Within seconds, Ash's back finally came in contact with the large hose itself, but since he was too big to get sucked in along with the water, the young rookie ended up getting painfully suctioned against the mouth of the hose. "Ah!" he gasped aloud in pain as he felt the force of the vacuuming pressure behind him attempting, yet failing, to suck his body inside of the hose. With Pikachu being protectively held against his chest, Ash was the only thing keeping all four of them from being pulled into the machine. Even Mankey and Goldine had been yanked into him and were now adding pressure against the boy's body, combined with the volumes of water trying to get around him. "Hey, that's no fair, you little cheater!" James pointed and scowled. "Don't block our water supply. Meowth, do something." The furry, bipedal cat Pokémon jumped up and swiped the controller from Jessie. Gladly. He then flipped a small black switch on the box, which caused the suction force of the vacuum to increase. "Ah! Ah!" Ash struggled to get free of the pull of the sucking hose while Brock and Misty looked on in dread terror at the plight of their friend. "Ash!" they both yelled just as the latter's sisters looked at one another. "Girls," Daisy's otherwise beautiful complexion turned uncommonly serious. "I think it's time we send these home wrecking, no sense of style freaks packing." "Totally Daisy, let's do it." Violet agreed with an eager smirk that was matched by Lily. "Yeah, let's show them how totally super awesome the sensational sisters really are." All three of the teenaged beauties stepped forward and pulled out a Pokeball. At the same time they threw all three balls into the air, and in bright explosions of light, a Tentacruel, Cloyster and Daisy's seal appeared on the edge of the pool. "What are you guys doing?" Misty looked shocked to see her sisters preparing for battle, but it was Violet who looked back and smiled. "You leave the rest of this to us, little sis, we aren't gonna let three nasty crooks destroy our family's gym." "Totally Misty, we'll save the day and your boyfriend too," Lily teased, which made Misty blush bright red and prepared to retort before Daisy looked at her and smiled in a surprisingly reassuring, elder sibling manner. "This gym is part of Mom and Dad's legacy, right, Mist? So since we're all a family, it's our responsibility to defend it, and you. So just leave it to us." Hearing her sister's words not only took her aback but touched her deeply as Misty's face went from stunned to hardened. She felt her eyes grow wet but managed to conceal it with a soft smile and a nod of her head. "Okay, you three. I trust you. Go get 'em." "Ooh, I'm so scared." Jessie mocked with her hands held up to her face. The waterlogged Barbies are going to stop us, how terrifying. She and her two villainous companions laughed while Daisy pointed and yelled out. You won't be laughing for long. Seal, use Ice Beam on the water and make a path to that machine. Even though it was still tired from the battle against Ash's Pokémon, Seal showed that it had spirit by charging up and releasing a quick Ice Beam attack at the turbulent pool water. This caused said aquatic surface to freeze over in an almost direct line from where they were standing, all the way to the vacuuming machine on the other end. The sight of this surprised the Rocket Trio, and James voiced it as he looked at Jessie. Best not take chances, we should fight back and make sure they don't do anything sneaky. She nodded in agreement, and then both of them pulled out their respective Pokeballs and released a Coughing and Ekans. The same two that Ash and Misty had battled at the Viridian City Pokémon Center. Ekans, make sure they don't damage this machine, Jessie ordered. You two Coughing. James followed just as both of their Pokémon moved forward to guard the pool vacuum with warning vocalizations. Coughing. Ekans. Seeing that Ash was reaching the end of his limit as the powerful suction of the hose kept yanking him painfully back into the metal seal, Daisy took urgent action. Seal, go and put that big hunk of junk out of commission with another Ice Beam. Just as the white-pelted mammal jumped down onto the icy path it had just made and started to slide across the frozen water on its belly, Violet looked at Lily. We need to help clear a way for Seal to get around those nasty two Pokémon. The redhead nodded and gave her own Pokémon its first commands. Cloyster, I know you aren't trained for battle, but just pretend this is part of the routines we do for our shows. Yet Tentacruel, you too. Violet chorused to the evolved form of Tentacool. Pretend those crooks are the bad guys in a drama show and you need to help Cloyster take them down. Both of them nodded and then hurried out onto the icy bridge and followed after Seal. When they were within close range of the other side of the pool, Jessie and James ordered their respective Pokémon to attack. Ekans, use Poison Sting. Coughing, use Sludge Attack. However, Lily and Violet were ready to support their sister's Pokémon, with the former yelling, Cloyster, use Iron Defense. The latter, meanwhile, followed up her sister's command in similar manner. Toss Cloyster to give it extra speed, Tentacruel. Withdrawing inside its hard shell, Cloyster's retracted state made it easy for Tentacruel to slide up behind it on the ice and wrap its multiple tentacles around the bivalve Pokémon. With a grunt of, Tentacruel, Violet's water show partner spun around to get speed and then tossed its fellow water type through the air at high velocity. Cloyster's shell glowed with a bright silvery sheen as it spun rapidly across the pool, Iron Defense taking effect and hardening its already near impenetrable outer surface layer. Due to the increased speed that Tentacruel's toss had afforded it, Cloyster quickly pulled ahead of Seal and brought its spinning form in line with both poisonous attacks that were incoming. Acting like a ballistically rotating shield, Cloyster intercepted the toxic barbs and the goopy ball of gunk before they could hit Seal. Since Lily's Pokémon was safely tucked away inside of its shell, the poison-type attacks had zero effect. Taking the offensive, both of Misty's sisters called out together. Cloyster, Tentacruel. Use Hydro Pump. Tentacruel, from behind Seal and Cloyster from the front, unleashed powerful, torrential cannons of water at their opponents, the latter having finally opened its shell in order to do so. Ekans and Coughing were woefully unprepared to withstand such a devastatingly overwhelming combo attack, and as such, took the full force brunt of the twin Hydro Pump, which not only blew them back through the air but also caused them to smash into Jessie, James and Meowth, launching all three straight into the massive metal machine behind them. Now Seal, use Ice Beam on that thing, Daisy ordered swiftly while Violet and Lily commanded their own Pokémon to rescue Ash. Just before Seal was in range to fire its icy attack, Tentacruel leapt out onto the large hose that was laying in the pool and had been draining up all of the water. Taking a firm hold on the cylindrical surface with its sticky, dexterous tentacles, the squid-like Pokémon reached down and quickly wrapped two around Ash. Even though the boy was stuck against the hose due to the intense sucking pressure of the powerful vacuum hose, Tentacruel was stronger. Therefore, with a hard and forceful, upward yank, it successfully pulled Ash free of the artificial current and out of the water. which also brought Pikachu, Mankey and the others with him. With its objective complete, Tentacruel leapt off the hose and back onto the icy path that Seal had made across the pool. As soon as this was done, Cloyster came spinning toward the hose like a fully wound top and struck it with enough strength and rotational speed to break it right in two. With the hose now severed and no longer able to suck up water, all of that which had been drained inside of the machine started to pour back out through the broken end. No fair, Meowth complained as his two teammates stood back up finally and saw all their efforts quite literally draining away. We worked hard to steal this thing, don't break it up. James whined piteously, though that only garnered Jessie's wrath as she rounded on them and growled ragefully. Don't just stand there whining about it. Do something, you morons. The trio of bona fide low-class crooks had no chance to reclaim their lost fortunes since, at that very moment, Seal leapt up from the ice and fired a beam of sub-zero, freezing polar energy at the industrial vacuum. As soon as the charge of icy matter struck the metallic surface, the former immediately began to spread until, within the span of only a few seconds, the entire machine became encapsulated in a block of thick ice. Unfortunately for them, the rocket threesome had also been trapped inside of the rapidly formed ice block since they were standing next to the vacuum, along with their Pokémon. SS so cold, Jessie chattered. I've heard of bein' put on ice, but this is ridiculous. Meowth himself was frozen in an awkward position with his paws extended above his head. IW wish I had my winter coat all of a sudden. The feminine-esque blue-haired man lamented as he stood frozen on one leg like an abstract statue. Having recovered from his ordeal, Ash straightened up on the icy path in the center of the pool and smirked as he saw the current state of the villainous Pokémon thieves. Well, here, lemme help you thaw out. He then pointed and gave a command which brought him no small degree of self-satisfaction. Pikachu used Thunderbolt. Smirking at the chance to once more punish the criminal robbers that for some reason was obsessed with stealing him, Pikachu began to spark his cheeks before raising up on two legs. With tiny paws clenched at his chest, the high-voltage mouse unleashed a powerful bolt of thunder from his small body with a loud cry of, Paika Achu. As soon as the electrical bomb of raw power struck the frozen machine, it didn't take long for the circuits inside to fry. The vacuum started to spark and smoke before, in a loud explosion that rocked the entire room, it blew apart into a million-piece rain of ice shards and tiny metal chunks. The force of the explosion was great enough that it unfortunately blew an even larger hole in the gym wall and further collateral damage all throughout the room. On the plus side, however, Jessie, James and Meowth were sent careening skywards outside, via said gaping hole. As they climbed at higher and higher altitudes, now free from their icy prison but smoking with black char marks covering their persons, Jessie threw her fists about in a dramatic temper tantrum. How did we lose again to those bratty twerps? Well, in all fairness, it was mostly the one twerp's older sisters this time, James pointed out sullenly, his head drooping in a state of comedic depression and defeat. Dis ain't gonna look good on our record with da boss. Meowth wailed in his high-pitched voice just as they all faded out of sight into the distant clouds with a synchronized yell of, Team Rocket's blasting off AGAAAIN. Yeah, and don't come back. Losers. Daisy called after them, sticking her tongue out derisively while Lily and Violet cheered at their victory. Ash soon walked back to the other side of the pool with Pikachu and Mankey in tow. Since a large portion of the center of the pool had been frozen over by Seal, Tentacruel had to carry Goldeen back. As soon as he came up onto the refreshingly nice, hard, flat surface of the gym floor, the exhausted young man dropped down onto his backside and released a long sigh of relief. His body was still sore and felt strangely heavy after nearly getting sucked inside of a giant hose. Ash, are you okay? Misty's face showed her concern for her friend as she, Brock and her sisters hurried up to his side. Yeah, I'm okay. He shifted a little and then winced slightly. Just a little sore is all. He then smiled and rubbed Pikachu between the ears while looking from him to Goldeen. I'm just glad Pikachu and Goldeen are okay. And the gym is safe. The orange-headed girl surprised him by lunging forward and hugging her friend tightly, perhaps a little too tight though given his soreness. I know Ash, and thank you so much for doing what you did. You didn't just risk your life to protect the gym, but you also saved Goldeen. I can't thank you enough." Offering a strained smile, Ash patted her back with one hand and grunted. "You're welcome, Misty, but you think you could maybe let me go now? I feel like a big piece of meat that was almost sucked down a tiny straw, and you're kinda hugging me a bit too tight." Her eyes went wide at his words and, registering what she was doing, she quickly pulled back, her face a light shade of red. "Oops. Sorry about that." Misty's sisters looked at one another and smirked knowingly at the display they had just witnessed while Brock lightly patted his friend's shoulder. "I tell you, man, you were lucky. If that hose had been just a bit bigger, you would have gotten sucked inside of that thing for sure." The younger boy nodded and then looked up and smiled at the teenaged young women standing in front of them. "If it wouldn't have been for Misty's sisters, I would have been. Man, I can't thank you three enough, you totally saved my neck. And Pikachu and Mankey too, I really owe you one." Daisy put her hands on her hips and raised a finely groomed blonde eyebrow in amusement. "Like, seriously? You're thanking us? No way." Violet shook her head. "Like, you were the first one to put yourself in harm's way to help protect our family's gym." Lily smiled admiringly and nodded in steadfast agreement. "Yeah, like, that was totally heroic, Ash, you're the one we should be thanking." "The truth is," Daisy began as she shrugged her shoulders lightly, "you were like, the one who inspired us to take action and stand up against those crooks who had like, the worst taste in fashion I've ever seen." Daisy then knelt down and fondly reached out to pet Seal upon the head. "I think we all learned a lot by battling you and taking on those three weirdos as well. I for one had forgotten how much fun battling could be, and exciting too." Lily and Violet both turned their attention to their own Pokémon and did the same as their eldest sister, showing Cloyster and Tentacruel, respectively, affection for the spirited determination they had shown. "I didn't know Cloyster actually had so much potential for battling, but like, he totally surprised me." Violet agreed with Lily's accurate summation of Cloyster as she ran her hand down along Tentacruel's delicate blue beak. "Yeah, and Tentacruel really knows how to like, save the day. Totally awesome." Daisy stood back up and looked at the three younger trainers again. "I guess in some ways we've gotten kind of like, negligent when it comes to being serious about training our Pokémon. But when those guys tried to like, destroy our gym, it totally got us fired up." Misty took that moment to stand as well and walked up to her sisters. "Listen, you three." She looked down and felt a little awkward while fidgeting with her fingers. "I'm sorry about thinking you guys didn't care about the gym and, well, everything else too. I was wrong." She looked at them finally and smiled softly. "You stood up against Team Rocket to save Ash and protect the gym. All three of you showed a lot of bravery and determination doing so, and well, it made me proud. I honestly didn't think you had it in you." While surprised at their little sister's praise, it nonetheless made the older girls smile as well. "Well, you weren't totally wrong, Misty," Daisy conceded. "We've become so focused on doing our shows that we let our skills as gym leaders fall to the wayside. I know we've like, pushed the gym duties onto you, but we honestly thought it was no big deal because we knew you loved training water Pokémon so much. But I guess we were also being kind of lazy in doing so though, because we used it as an excuse to just forget about the gym almost completely. Only battling when we had to, like when you were gone," Violet admitted. Lily nodded. "Yeah, like, we stopped caring, and I can see now that it wasn't very cool of us to act like that." Daisy placed a hand on her youngest sister's shoulder. "Mom and Dad entrusted this gym to us originally, and then we trained you. But we haven't been really good role models lately, and the battle we had with Ash just now, and that whole thing with Team Rocket, showed us that." The blonde beauty smiled in a manner that conveyed her elderly sibling love and affection for her baby sister. "When our home was threatened just now, and you were by extension too, Misty, it like, reminded us how important what Mom and Dad entrusted to us is. And even more than the gym, that means you especially. So like, I guess what we're trying to say is." All three sensational sisters spoke in tandem then with sincere smiles. "We're sorry, Misty." While hearing such words coming from her normally vain and airheaded sisters was shocking, to say the very least. The heartfelt genuineness that she could tell was present in them hit Misty deep in her heart. Unable to help herself, tears came to her eyes and the redhead felt a lump form in her throat, which she could also feel was attempting to choke up her voice as she smiled too. "Ah, you guys." And with that, she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around Daisy in a tight hug. The elder Waterflower did the same and hugged her little sister back just as tight while Violet and Lily quickly joined in on the touching, heartfelt family moment. Tears were present even in their own eyes. Ash and Brock watched the scene unfold, their own hearts being warmed at the sight, before the former looked down at Mankey and smiled. "Hey Mankey." The fighting type looked at him as the dark-haired boy got down on his knee. "Thanks for helping me save Pikachu and Goldeen. You were right there with me and you didn't even think twice before jumping in. That meant a whole lot to me and I can't thank you enough doing what you did. I'm proud of you Mankey." The furry monkey in question appeared taken aback for a moment by his trainer's praise, but that only lasted for a short few seconds. In a surprising display of unexpected emotion, Mankey's eyes became shimmery and full of tears. For poor Ash though, his Pokémon's display of affection came in the form of jumping up and accidentally cold-cocking his trainer right under the chin. "Mankey! Mankey!" With a pained grunt of, "oomph," Ash fell back on the floor like a stiff board and simply lay where he was, a red fist mark under his chin and his eyes dizzily unfocused from the fierce, yet accidental blow. Mankey just stared at his sprawled trainer and blinked in confusion, unable to understand what just happened, while Ash, for his part, raised a shaky thumbs up into the air. "I'll love you too, pal." Misty and her sisters saw this and it broke them away from their hug as the 4 Waterflower siblings, plus Brock and even Pikachu, laughed at the humorous spectacle between trainer and Pokémon. Mankey, for his part, still didn't quite understand and he showed it by scratching his head and blinking again. "Mankey. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX." 2 days came and went at a relatively casual pace after the Cerulean gym escapade. Once the immediate aftermath of Team Rocket's attack had subsided, Daisy ended up calling the police so that they could come out and officially record the incident. More for insurance purposes than anything else. The somewhat more stern and serious than usual Officer Jenny, at least compared to the one in Viridian City, had been both shocked, yet relieved, to hear that the stolen aquatic vacuum her department had been searching for was no longer a mystery. Even though she was frustrated with the knowledge that she would be unable to return the machine to the rental shop it had been stolen from, Jenny was nonetheless satisfied to at least know who the culprits had been. Also, with the question answered of not only who had stolen it and why, but that the vacuum was now destroyed and unable to be used for any other nefarious plots, the female officer felt confident on finally closing the case. Sadly though, the shop owners themselves would have to swallow the loss completely. The damage that had been done to the gym ended up being quite extensive, and after doing their best to clean up what they could manage themselves, there was nothing left for Misty and her sisters to do except call the Pokémon League for an insurance claim. Since any kind of repairs to the gym were far out of question until the claim went through and a construction crew came out to put everything right again, they all decided to take some time unwinding. Misty and her sisters took Ash and Brock out on the town and showed them all the best hotspots, locals and shops. Of course, the girls had ended up dragging both boys on a shopping excursion or two, but since Cerulean wasn't the size of huge metropolitan cities like Celadon or Saffron, it wasn't nearly as horrible as it could have been. Even Brock had managed to go to the place he had been wanting to visit ever since they arrived in the city. The special venue in question ended up being a small but cozy coffee shop near the outskirts of town. When questioned by his friends as to what was so special about the simple coffee beanery, he had replied by telling them that it was the place that his mother and father first met. And that, over the years at home, his mother always made sure to keep a freshly delivered supply of Cerulean Cafe's finest on hand. Apparently, he wanted to stop and buy a bag himself since they were passing through the area. Both because he just liked the taste of the coffee and also, in his words, it was a way of carrying home, and his mother, with him on their journey. For Ash though, what he enjoyed seeing the most was how Misty and her sisters really got a chance to reconnect over their 2-day stay. He could see that his battle with the sisters, as well as Team Rocket's subsequent failed burglary, had succeeded in bringing the Waterflower siblings closer together. They still had differences, of course, any family did, but the old saying, "Trials can mend the deepest of wounds," was indeed true on some level. Daisy, Lily and Violet had been showing more respect and consideration to Misty, and he could see that, in turn, it had not only improved the Orangette's mood but also the way in which she interacted with her older siblings. On the second day of their stay, early in the afternoon, Ash, Brock and Misty stood outside the gym and prepared to finally hit the road once more. The thin and fit young girl's sisters were gathered to see them off. "Like, it's kind of sad to see you guys leaving, we've actually enjoyed hanging out with you," Lily lamented in a bittersweet fashion. "Yeah, you guys are pretty cool, Misty has made some totally rad friends," Violet complimented with a playful wink. "We enjoyed hanging out with you too," Ash replied with a cheerful Pikachu on his shoulder chirping in agreement. "But we need to hit the road. Brock says it'll take a while to reach Vermilion City since we wanna hit some of the more out-of-the-way, minor Pokémon gyms while we're at it." Over the recent 2 days of spending time with Misty's sisters, he had already informed them of his desire to try and earn every gym badge in the region that he could before the next year's Indigo Conference. It was a challenging goal indeed which, while appearing admittedly lofty to some, the three beautiful aquatic performers had no doubts that Ash could achieve it after seeing his growing skill firsthand. "Yeah, and the closest one to us between here and Vermilion is Rolanda Town," Brock reminded while looking at his friend. "If you can win there it'll get you your 3rd badge, Ash." At that, Daisy's green eyes shone in remembrance as she held up her finger. "Oh, that's right Ash, I almost forgot." She then reached into the pocket of the cream-white skirt she was wearing and presented to the boy across from her a small, blue, waterdrop-shaped badge. "I'm sorry we didn't give this to you sooner, but after everything that's happened over the last 2 days, it just totally slipped my mind." She then held the shiny new badge out in the palm of her hand and smiled. "You didn't just defeat all 4 of us fair and square, but you also risked your life to protect our gym and the Pokémon in it. I speak for myself and Lils and V2 when I say you're totally more worthy of this Cascade badge than anyone we've ever given it to before." Both of the other girls nodded in unwavering agreement. "Totally." Reaching out, Ash took the badge in hand and held it up while his lips cracked into a wide grin. "Wow, thanks, this is so awesome." He then looked at Pikachu and chuckled. "Isn't this awesome pie? We got our 2nd gym badge." The adorable little electric-type eye smiled and chirped happily at the sight. "Pikachu pie. You really did earn it, Ash," Misty spoke in a complimentary tone. "I don't like to admit it, but you beat me too, no questions asked." She then winked. "Just don't let it go to your head because next time we battle, I'll win." He laughed in amusement hearing that, but his attention was directed back to Daisy as she spoke again. "To tell you the truth Ash, we battled 3 other kids from Pallet Town before you got here, but you were hands down tougher than they were." "Yeah, you seemed like an experienced trainer compared to them," Violet agreed while Lily tapped her chin. The only one who came close was this really cocky boy with brown hair and a cheer squad that followed him around. He was really good too." Ash nodded. "Yeah, I know who you're talking about. His name's Gary Oak and he is good with Pokémon. He's just a little too arrogant for his own good." At that moment, Daisy looked toward her youngest sister and smiled softly. "Well missed, this is it. I hope you have a super awesome journey and learn a lot. You've made some really good friends and I know they'll help watch out for you. Just, please be careful and make sure to call home every once in a while, okay?" The petite young water-type specialist offered her older sister a similar smile and nodded. "I will, Daisy, and thank you. All 3 of you. Thanks for promising to look after the gym while I'm gone." Lily offered her a thumbs up and winked. "And you can bet on it that we're gonna do a totally awesome job too. Yeah, we're gonna start training with our Pokémon a lot more and try to divide our time equally between our shows and running the gym," Violet proclaimed. We're even gonna start training the Pokémon we use in our shows to battle as well. That way we'll have a wider variety and more options to take on challengers with." Lily finished in an enthusiastic tone. Daisy smiled reassuringly at her youngest sister. "So you can rest totally easy, Misty, we've got this. I know it'll take a while for you to trust that we're really gonna change and take this seriously, but we'll prove it. And that's a promise." The shorts-wearing preteen was uplifted by her sister's words, and for the first time ever, she actually believed in what they were telling her. Therefore, she smiled in a challenging, confident manner and put her hands on her hips. "Well then, I'm gonna hold you three to it, and when I come home next time, I wanna hear a full report." Her smile became a little gentler after that though, as she stepped forward and hugged her sisters, whom returned the embrace in a tender moment of familial compassion. "I love you guys, thanks again." As if they were triplets, her elder sisters replied in tandem, "We love you too, Misty," before eventually separating and letting her go. "Bye you three, take care of each other." Daisy waved, along with Violet and Lily, as the trio of young traveling companions turned and started walking down the path leading away from the gym. "Bye. See ya. I'll call you guys soon," came the reply of Ash, Misty and Brock while they walked farther and farther away from the Cerulean gym. "We'll look after Misty, don't worry," the raven-haired boy yelled back. "Thanks for the battle, hope to see ya again soon." Just before they were out of sight, the three sensational sisters called out together. "Bye Pikachu." Turning on his trainer's shoulder, the small but spirited electric mouse waved his tiny arm back while smiling at the send-off. Pikachu. Turning ahead to face the road ahead, the same one in which would lead them out of the city and into the vast open countryside beyond, Ash readjusted his pack and smiled. "Well guys, this is it, our families are fully behind us at this point and we're heading out into the world. Kinda surreal, huh?" "Yeah, but I think we can handle whatever comes our way," the squinty-eyed older boy replied. Misty smiled. "Maybe if we weren't starting out as friends I'd worry a bit, but since we are, yeah, I agree with Brock. Whatever we end up going through, I know we can take it. I mean, look at what we've already been through since we started." The tan-skinned and cheek-marked rookie grinned and put his hands behind his head. "Hey, no kidding. A run-in with a dangerous criminal organization, kids jumping out at ya with sharp swords and blown-up buildings. I can't see it getting much more crazy than that." The three young friends laughed together at that, feeling rather self-assured that the worst was most likely already behind them. Oh, if only they knew.